Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
Yes.
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, February 1st. Appreciate you being with us. Looking forward to another fun show on the docket for today. John Boy, who all do we have?
Shannon Griffith will join us here in our first hour for you Fort Wayne listeners, and then we'll also be joined later on by Tyler Smith of thehoosier.com. And we may or may not hear from Kristen Airy. I know we talked about that yesterday. He probably won't be able to join us, so we'll see what else we can get scheduled up for us today.
Yeah, Chris is on the road with the Pacers, and sometimes the schedule with meetings and all of that travel get in the way. So and sometimes it's just, oh boy, I spilled my coffee. Sometimes it's just too much. It's too hard on the guy. We're so grateful to have him. So yeah, we'll see if we can get him or not. But looking forward to another fun day. Last night in the Big Ten, big time game between Purdue and Northwestern. Boo Booey, get that one out of the way. Got to say it, Boo Booey. Purdue comes up with a win, but boy, oh boy, they are lucky to escape in overtime in a game in which Chris Collins gets ejected. I've got to pull that story up. I just had it here. Oh, yeah. He walked into the post-game press conference Wednesday and offered this is from the story in ESPN, offered all of the customary words in his opening statement. He knew what was coming next, the question about what led to his ejection with 1.7 seconds left in a 105-96 overtime loss to number 2 Purdue. Northwestern has taken Purdue to the mat both times they've played. And before I even say a word, Loading says Purdue got lucky, Northwestern got hosed. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about right there, Philip. Purdue got a favorable whistle yesterday with a disparity of 46 free throws compared to 8 for Northwestern. Now, how is that even possible? One might ask. I don't know that it is. I mean, it happened, so it's possible. But, yeah, Collins didn't say a word about the referees. He wanted to avoid the fine that would accompany it. But he did acknowledge the 38 shot difference in free throw attempts between that might have played a difference in the ball game. You think? 38? Holy crap. He said, quoting Chris Collins, I don't know if you've ever seen a disparity like that in a Big Ten game, Collins said. I mean, I feel like we were aggressive too, but Boo Booey doesn't shoot a free throw in the game. It's kind of crazy, but that's how the game is called. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, well, talk about that. I saw that as well, Carl. The ladies win at Maryland for the first time. Indiana's women. Big time win for them. And they win easily. But in the Purdue game, a 46-8 attempt disparity at the free throw line, the largest free throw attempt gap in a Big Ten conference game in over 25 years, according to ESPN stats and information. The discrepancy was also the second largest across Division I this season, trailing only Northwestern's 51-9 free throw advantage against Old Dominion on December 2nd. So ironically, Northwestern has been involved in the top two free throw disparity games, and the gaps are unbelievable. But they were on the receiving end of one and the bad end of the other, which is crazy. Among that disparity, Collins' emotions boiled over in the waning moments of the game. Once that they knew that you could tell the Wildcats' fate was sealed, he walked onto the court, yelling furiously at one official with the ball still in play. Wow. Drawing an immediate technical foul and the subsequent ejection. The argument continued near midcourt, where a Northwestern player restrained Collins and guided him toward the bench before the coach finally headed into the tunnel toward the locker room. Bowie also drew a technical, giving the Boilermakers 4 late free throw attempts after the game was decided. After he departed, Collins congratulated Purdue coach Matt Painter and reigning National Player of the Year Zach Edey before gesturing to the booing fans to get louder. So by the time Collins spoke afterwards, he had calmed down enough to acknowledge Purdue deserved to win a game that went back and forth for most of the final 10 minutes of the regulation. But what a hell of a game that was. Northwestern, man, they're going to be one of those teams you don't want to catch in the tournament. I'm telling you, they're just better than people think. I know their record is not they're not hell. They weren't even ranked, and probably still won't be after this. But how do you take the number 1/2 team in the country into overtime twice, beat them once, and not be a top 25 team? No idea. Loading's asking what was the official's name. I don't know, but I'd have to go back and see if it was the one that I'm thinking of that I don't like from the Big Ten. I'm not going to say his name, other than he was fired as a police officer and lied about several things on his resume. But that's okay. That's the kind of officials you want. I know what it was. He was fired because of racial bias. So yeah, that's an official you want on your in your room right there, right? A police officer that was fired for being racially insensitive. Yeah, what a great hire, Big Ten. Nice one. But I don't know if this was the same guy. I have a beef with that dude. But hey, we've got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up. Shannon Griffith is going to join us on the other side. We'll talk some football, get you caught up on what's going on in that realm of the world. Then they've been talking so much basketball. Brought to you by our good friends at Hoosier Hanks East, located on the College Mall Road in Bloomington. Make sure you stop by, see Benny and the boys. I just had a couple of pieces of leftover pizza, as a matter of fact, before we came on the air. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio and Shannon Griffith right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Morning, Shannon.
Good morning. Not much.
Damn. I knew I did that.
I'm trying to find the first commit of the 25 class. I know he's from Carl Sandburg in Illinois.
I saw him yesterday, or not in real life, but I saw his name yesterday.
Yeah, Matt. It's Matt something.
He's an offensive lineman.
Yeah, he's a real good one too. And of course, when you need it the most, you can't find it.
I think one of Jim's dudes posted about it too, so I'm trying to find one of them.
Jim's dudes.
I've been Mason.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, Matt Merrick.
Merrick. There you go. Mr. Matt Merrick. Big offensive line, like 6'5", 330 or something like that. Carl Sandburg High School.
You go corn-fed boy.
Yeah, up there. Really good high school football. And IU's had success with that school in the past.
Where are you tonight? Oh, yeah. Indiana's women's team. That's always a beating Maryland. It's amazing. Indiana's women's basketball team lost 2 games, 9-1 in conference play, but their 2 losses are by an average of 30 points.
That's weird.
Yeah, gone.
I mean, it's weird. They're better than about anybody except for top 10 teams. But the difference is like unbelievable. I'm like, whoa, how are you getting beat by 30 by 2 different teams?
Yeah.
All right, here we go, guys.
And now, fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate you. As always, we're grateful to have you along. Joined now by Shannon Griffith from Hoosier Tailgate. Talk some football, man. We haven't talked football hardly, since last week.
A lot of things happen in a week.
Yeah, the funny thing is, if you go to thehoosier.com, there's a piece up from Adam Gorney, the national guy and the national recruiting director for football, and he ranks some of all the big hires: Michigan, Alabama, Arizona, et cetera. And I got to give him credit. He opens up his review, or whatever you want to call it, on Indiana, and it says, I Googled new Indiana coach Kurt Cignetti. He wins. Cignetti is 119-35 as a coach, but this isn't Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Elon or James Madison, although he did a phenomenal job at all those stops and put the Dukes in the national conversation this year. But this job at Indiana might be as close to impossible as there is in Power 5 football, which we'll get back to that, which I just don't understand.
Yeah.
The Hoosiers lost a lot of players to the transfer portal, but one wonders whether that's necessarily a bad thing given their record in recent years. Cignetti also smartly used the portal to bring in some fresh blood, much of it from his James Madison team, so that will be something to watch. Here's a worrisome fact, though. From 2008 to 2023, not counting the COVID years, Indiana has one winning season. And the Big Ten is getting much, much, much more challenging. But he gives up a grade of A-. Yeah, that wasn't a lot that we didn't already know, to be honest with you.
Well, I always like when they selectively throw out some of the best years in the history. So we're going to exclude the COVID year because that doesn't count.
Yeah. Well, it obviously made a difference, but that's still,
they played the games.
Last year's team would not have had the success that they had in the COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
The COVID year team was badass.
Well, yeah,
they had the pieces in place.
Yeah, one of them just played in the national championship game
and was a Heisman runner-up.
That's right.
So there's just that, and 3 of the coaches on that staff were on the staff of the team that played in the national championship and are now at Alabama.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I
mean, actually,
there's 4.
There's if not 5.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know who all has gone with him from Washington that was Indiana connected. But Kane Womack, like we talked before, from South Alabama, joined him. And
and there's a guy that was, and I forget his name, but was the director of recruiting at Georgia that I think was a former Indiana football player.
Yeah.
Who was either interviewed for the position, the same position at Alabama.
Yeah, and that's you start getting into these off the field personnel, senior analysis and GM football and recruiting analysis and things of that nature. It gets a little mind boggling. And there's actually a team out there, and I don't know who it is, but they've actually got a player personnel for offense, player personnel for defense. And their responsibility is to evaluate the depth of that side of the football, and then also look in where they could pick up guys in the portal and all those type of things. I mean, it's really gotten to the point where they're going to start having algorithms and stats that make a decision on whether you recruit a guy or not. It's gotten to that point.
Matt Merrick is the latest recruit for Indiana, big 6'4", 285-pounder from the same high school as former Indiana offensive lineman Dan Feeney.
Yep.
Little note there. On film, he has quick feet and overpowers the defense, which that's something you like to hear.
Well, when you get those offensive linemen, especially the big kids that can move, and it's mostly laterally, left to right. Those kids that have that, Dan Feeney had it, of course. That's why, NFL guy. And he comes from a good school, a good high school football program up there in Chicagoland. And when you can get some of those kids from top-tiered programs, you're getting a well-coached, well-tooled student athlete. And that's the key component to it all. And those are the type of guys like you get, Bob Bopsted's stable, and he has a chance to work with them for a year or two. And then they, come on the scene and they're just ready to go and they're really good. So I'm sure they like to take about 7 or 8 of those type of guys.
Yeah. And the good thing is Indiana's got a little bit of a head start, though, in the offensive line. As far as not having to start from scratch, they got some, a couple of guys back, a couple of guys in the portal. Just kind of a hodgepodge, but that's okay. If you get the guys you want and the guys who you feel will buy in, that's as important as anything. It's as important as getting someone who might be a tick higher rated but doesn't buy in. You've got to have buy-in from everybody. And if you have that, then you have a team on the same page. And if you have a team on the same page, well, that team is just going to be a little more, use the word dangerous, but dangerous meaning potentially to be more successful than not.
Right. Yeah. And, that was kind of some of the things that in my interview with Brian Haynes that played last night, he kind of talked about the same component of, getting that message from the top down and then making sure that each position group has that same message. And then that way you've got all cylinders working together. And when you have that, you've got a team that's a very bona fide, tough nails football team with no, position group kind of on their own. They're all working in unison. And I think that's one thing that, Coach Signetti has done at every place that he's been is, the things behind the scenes, not necessarily the things that people see on Saturday afternoons. It's the behind the scenes things that they do to create that successful team environment.
Yeah, and that's something that no disrespect to Tom Allen, because he was all about team. He was all about having, but there has to be success, because if you're not successful, there's going to be fractures in that quote unquote team.
Yes.
Because without success, that fracture comes from doubt. That fracture comes from disappointment. That fracture comes from a lot of different areas of people not playing, thinking they should be playing, especially when you're not winning.
Yeah.
You're like, well, that ain't working. So there's just so many areas of fracture when you don't win. I don't care how hard you try to maintain this team concept. There has to be a recipe of winning, and Tom did not have the winning recipe, and that was the problem during that time, in my opinion.
No, yeah, and you're right. You gotta the kids got to have the reward, for the hard work and the things that you do behind the scenes, and when those things don't come to fruition, there's only so much time you have until that doubt creeps into the minds of those that are there, and then all of a sudden, like you said, you've got, well, I don't know why that kid's playing. I'm better than him. And you start getting the fractures, like you said, amongst the team. And it's all because you don't have success. And when you have a season like IU had last year, where you had 5 or 6 games that were, 6 points or less, those are even 10 times as worse than getting beat by 40. Because that frustration is a lot bigger because it was right there. And then that's when you really start getting the doubt of why things aren't getting over the hill.
And more on Indiana's latest pickup of Matt Merrick, the 2025 kid. If I could get out of that, daggone it.
Computers don't always work the way you want.
Stupid ad blocker.
Yeah.
Thanks for the ad blocker, but you're also blocking everything else. But oh well, we'll skip that for now. But that's just an area that shows that they're still going to develop guys.
Oh yeah.
And I think that that's been an area where Indiana has missed. There was no development going on really in a lot of areas. They're fortunate to hang on to Bob Bostad. That was probably an area where they weren't having the problem, but he wasn't in the position long enough for that fruit to come to fruition.
Well, I think you saw some of the evidence of Coach Bobstad's ability with everything on the field that he was able to accomplish there as the season went on. And I think it was a huge retain by Coach Signetti because of Coach Bobstad's, years of college football experiences, his success at Wisconsin. I think there's a meeting of the minds of what it takes in terms of, like you said, developing players. You can't just always be portal. You have to have those freshmen that become sophomores and juniors and seniors in your team because that ultimately is what creates the depth for you. And I think Bobstad does that very, very well with his offensive linemen and development. So I think that was a key component for why Coach Signetti actually kept Bobstad with him in the program.
Yeah, he was the only coach retained, and that shows that says a lot right there. That of the respect that he has for Bob Bostad, who has those Wisconsin roots. And if you know anything about Wisconsin football from even recent times, man, everything that their success started and ended from the offensive line. They grow them big up there, and they train them big up there.
Oh yeah. Wisconsin, there's a storied history there with the big kids, not just, that get to go to, University of Wisconsin. They all end up in the Wisconsin system somewhere. And then down there through that Chicagoland area in the suburbs where this Warwick kid came from. And that's a fruitful recruiting grounds for a lot of schools. And in Indiana, they used to have a pretty good hold in that area with getting kids out of. So it's good to see them get a kid out of that area at that prominent, school. Now, there is a long time between now and next December that this young man, has to weather the storm of potential other suitors per se. So, it's nice that they get a kid that of that caliber now, but there's a long nurturing process that has to occur between now and next December. That's the issue that you have in college football right now, is getting them to that point.
And Coach Signetti is this will be the busiest year of his tenure at IU, probably, because he has to come in, get everything in order, go through this spring, heading toward this spring practice, which is not that far away, by the way, and start getting things in order and lining up a depth chart. And this is not going to be a depth chart that contains a quarterback mystery, fortunately. But it's going to be, what is going to be interesting to watch for me is the race at backup for quarterback. Everyone thinks that Taven Jackson is the heir apparent to that number 2 spot, and I don't agree. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm not sure that Alberto Mendoza will be ready for. He probably can't challenge for that because he's not going to be a mid-season enrollee. So that's going to put him far further behind. But someone who is going to be a mid-season enrollee is Tyler Cherry from the same high school that David went to. Yeah, and I think that he can challenge him for that number 2 spot.
Well, there's no question that room as a whole is going to be a very competitive room. And I'm anxious to see where how Tino Sinceri, handles that room, because sometimes a change in a quarterback coach is the lights go off with the kid that's, the one that you think you should be the guy. And all of a sudden a new coach comes in and the lights go off for that kid. And all of a sudden they become who they should become. So with like Taven in that regard, but you're correct. I think Tyler Cherry is going to be a kid that will get a lot of opportunity in the spring. They've got to see what they have at that position. The other bad thing about the portal is there's another portal that comes open at the end of spring there, right in the early part of May. And you could see some of these guys, especially in that quarterback room, that if they're not going to be where they think they should be, they may look to, greener pasture somewhere else, especially at that position. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic and competitive room. And we're going to find out pretty quickly here because March is right around the corner.
Absolutely. Right now, Shannon Griffith is with us. We're talking some football, Big Ten football, Indiana football. We've got more to come on that right on the other side, brought to you by the Chop Shop Market and Table. Each Monday night at 7:05, you can find Don Fisher and Mike Woodson for Inside Indiana Basketball. And we'll back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
All right. Hey, Shannon. So I've got the how long is it? The minute and 40-second version of the Coach Haynes clip, if you think it's worth us playing.
Well, that's up to you guys. I just sent it. I just sent it because I didn't know, sometimes you need a filler.
And Jim likes playing, especially when it's coaches. So, I mean,
yeah. I'm perfectly fine with that being, if he wants to throw it up and I can expand upon it a little bit, but it's up to you. Is that the
one you sent me? I thought it was a player you talked to.
It was the young defensive coordinator.
You thought this was a player?
He looks like a player. He was
he could be like a 5th or 6th year guy. If he definitely better.
He was a heck of a linebacker at my alma mater, where I coached at Ball State. He was a beast, and he was a high energy guy, and I think that's what you'll see from him on Saturday afternoons as well. I think he'll be a great rally for that defensive unit. Some similarities in terms of his intensity, but not over the top, sideline display. Yeah, right. Because Tom's a great, defensive mind. And
I'm really interested to see how he's going to work out at Penn State.
Well, I would say just fine with it.
And I think you think he would, but it'll be really weird to see him. I know they don't play Indiana next year, but to see him, be himself and jumping on players' backs and stuff at Penn State, because I feel like it's not really the type of school you really see that kind of stuff at usually.
Yeah, and who knows?
You think James Franklin said, "Tone it down a little bit," Tom Allen?
He may have, but then again, he may say, "We need more of that."
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But the talent he's going to have on their defense next year is going to be unreal.
It's something that he's never had, number one, though.
Right.
And I wonder if that'll be a positive or a negative.
All right, here we go, guys.
The prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here with you on this Thursday. It is February 1, President's Month. Welcome aboard. Shannon Griffith with us from Hoosier Tailgate. We're talking some football, Big Ten football, Indiana football. Brian Haynes, Indiana's freshly minted defensive coordinator, coach, linebackers coach as well. Shannon talked to him recently. He was, what's that?
Last night.
Oh, it was last night. I didn't realize it was that soon. He was a 2023 Broyles Award semifinalist and named defensive coordinator linebackers coach by Kurt Cignetti back in early December. He's been a member of all four of Cignetti's head coaching staffs, and he's been the coordinator and co-coordinator of the defense of each of those staffs for 5 seasons at James Madison. Played linebacker at Ball State and has coached that position for the last 8 years, including a stint as a grad assistant at Indiana in 2012. In each of his 4 seasons at James Madison, the Dukes ranked top 10 nationally in total defense. His unit sat among the top 10 in the FCS in scoring defense, while ranking the top 25 programs' first 2 FBS seasons in 22 and 23. So, not bad.
No, right. And you know, I'm a little bit more in tune with Bryant just because he worked for me for a year when I was head coach at Manchester University. He got his start there. And, you know, you get around a guy like him and you just immediately know that he's got that it factor. And it's sometimes hard to describe, but you get around him and you can just sense it in his personality, the way he, handles himself, the way he talks. And, he is a well-rounded football guy. And he's been around some really good coaches. He was at UC Davis for a year, and the head coach that's now at Northwestern was on that staff, Braun. And the new DC at Minnesota was on that staff. I mean, so he's been around a lot of great coaches. GA'd for Urban Meyer at Ohio State, so he got a year around Urban Meyer. He's been fortunate to be around some really good coaches. And, like he told me, he's taken a little bit from everywhere he's been.
Well, and then that gives you Cignetti's experience around Saban. When you're around greatness, that helps because greatness spawns greatness sometimes. Not always, but you can get an understanding of what their mindset is, why they do certain things, how they do certain things, and either emulate that or put your own little twist on it. But as long as you have an understanding of it, there's a reason people win. Mm-hmm. Success does not happen by accident. It's just not accidental. And
some of those places that he's been, those have been tough places to coach at. I mean, you weren't going to always get the greatest player, and you had to take and do with what you had and find what a kid does well or not. And, making sure that, he has a full pulse of the kids around him. He made an interesting comment. Urban Meyer would always tell his position coaches, you better something to the extent of power your unit, because what he was trying to express is that you look at the first team guys, they're always the well-coached guys, and then an injury comes and now the second team guy comes in and maybe he doesn't have a clue because they were spending all their time and energy with the first guy. Well, Urban Meyer was really big about making sure that you powered your unit, which means it doesn't matter whether it's the first guy or the fifth guy in the room. You better make sure they all know what they're doing, because they're only a snap or two away from being on the field. And if he gets out there and doesn't know what he's doing, I'm not holding the kid responsible. I'm holding you responsible.
Yeah,
and so,
there's no sport that requires more of a second teamer than football.
yeah, exactly. Because there's just so much, a lot of too deep players play, significant snaps.
Anyway. I was going to say that means you're playing. You're starter 1B is what you are.
So, but he is talked a little bit about his philosophy a little bit. We talked about his journey to where he was. It was a great time of just sitting down with an old coach that I had to see where he's at, and pretty proud of the fact that he's done what he's done.
Let's hear what he had to say.
Expect from his defense that hey Brian, it's your show, baby, but here's what I want it to be. Boom, boom, boom. Kind of that mentality. You run it, you do what you want to do, but here's my personality that I want to inflect upon the defensive unit.
Right. So the first three things are that he wants a defense that's fast, physical, and relentless. You're going to probably hear me say that every single time that we talk, and you ask about who are you guys on defense? Fast. We're going to be very fast. We're going to be very physical, and we're going to play with a motor. We're going to have an unbreakable will about us. We're going to rally to the ball. We're going to swarm. We're going to be very aggressive. He wants to stop the run. It's important to coach, and that's important to me too. We've done that in my 2 years as a coordinator. My first year as a coordinator, we were number 2 defense in the country, stopping the run. We were 1 for a long time, and then Georgia went on a tear and took the number 1 spot from us in that title game against TCU back in 22. This past year, we're number 1 in the country stopping the run by a good amount. I hope to continue that trend. We're going to stop the run. We're going to make teams play left-handed. So you're going to have to do things that you're uncomfortable to do to try to beat our defenses. So stop the run, fast, physical. He likes aggression. Thankfully, he hired me as a DC, and I'm aggressive. I blitz a lot. I want to hit quarterbacks. I want to put offenses behind the sticks. I believe that you can win football games on defense by creating explosives in the same way that an offense tries to create explosives. Offenses have max protection shots where guys run a quadruple move down the field. Why can't I bring a 25-man pressure? I'm kidding. I only get 11.
You can get a sense of his demeanor, I guess I would say there. A quiet, aggressive mentality, what he expects, and what Cignetti expects from him as being that guy in that message that he has to get across to the assistant coaches he had. He talked about the assistant coaches that are with him, and he's pretty fired up to team up with some guys that, he hasn't had a pleasure of coaching with that are now joining them on the defensive side of the ball. But you're at James Madison, you're number 1 in the country in stopping the run, and number 2 a year ago. You can see why he was a Broyles finalist, and that's a national recognition. And that's a pretty big thing to say, that when you're when you can't run the football, you got problems. And that's why JMU was so good, because like he said, he wants to make the quarterback left-handed. He doesn't want them to get comfortable. He'll bring pressures. He talked later on about inward simplistic, outward complexity, in terms of what they like to do defensively, with different tendencies and blitzes and coverages. It may look complex on the outside, but on the inside, it's overly simplistic. And that gives them a chance to play fast and physical. So, he's, like I said, he's got an it factor about him, and I can see why Cignetti's had him and kept him and brought him to Indiana and put him in the position that he's in, even though he's still a young coach when you really look at his overall picture.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to take to turn this Titanic around. And that's what you can look at Indiana as. You're basically trying to keep the Titanic from hitting the iceberg. Now, a lot of people can say it's too late. It's already hit the iceberg. It's hit the iceberg 1,000 times.
That's right.
Guess what? Every season you get a reset and you get another shot at going down that way and avoiding the iceberg. And can Kurt Cignetti be one of the few coaches that's been able to avoid the iceberg? I think you should never use a tragedy as a metaphor, but since that one's 100 years old, I think we're okay and safe to use that one.
Yeah, we won't cancel you for that one. No, I think you're going to see offense and defense working together. And what I mean by that is, some people call it complementary football. Defense, stop the run, get the offense behind the sticks, set up field position, offense capitalize on it. I think you're going to see, that mentality at least trying to be employed each and every week, that they hit the field. And then, of course, if they can get the talent and continue that push to get the right kids in the right paces, you're going to see a defense that can be a very dominant defense, I believe, with what they like to do, with their philosophy as a defense. And I'm excited to see what that brings for him and that unit overall. And he alluded a little bit to being the quote unquote highest paid assistant. He said something to the extent that he had a buddy call him and said, "Hey, you hit the lottery." And he says, "Well, no, hitting the lottery is when you punch in some numbers and all of a sudden you're lucky because it comes up the way you want it, or you pull the lever on the slot machine." He says, there was a lot of sleeping on the floors and not eating and making $6,000 a year and living in a crappy old house that was about to fall down. He says, my path here and my journey here was filled with a lot of things that we tried to do the right way. And he's happy to be where he's at.
My friend Pete sent a list of the top 10 highest paid coaches in all of football. And Kurt Cignetti is not on that, so that's not where I'm going to. But you look down the list quickly. Of course, you've got Dabo Swinney at the top, $11.5 million per year. And his contract runs until 2031. So job security, baby. Kirby Smart, $11.25 million. The second highest paid coach. His contract pays him $112 million over 10 years. Not bad. Ohio State coach Ryan Day signed an extension in 2022 that brought his salary to $9.5 million through 2028. However, the Columbus Dispatch reports that Day received a 5% pay raise in 2023. As a result, he reportedly earns around $10.2 million per year. Then coming in at number 4 is our old buddy Kalen DeBoer. His contract with Alabama has not been disclosed. However, it is reported that he will earn an average salary of $10 million over the contract term. DeBoer replaced legendary coach, of course, Nick Saban in January, and has more than doubled his salary since leaving Washington for the Crimson Tide. So he's doubled his salary since leaving Washington, and he quadrupled his salary just in the short time of Indiana to Washington, which was 2 years, because he went back to Fresno State it 1 year? 1 year?
I want to say at least 2. I think it was at least 2, because he had a little bit of success there that got him attracted by the Washington people. So
within 4 years, basically, he's gone from probably earning, I forget what he got at Indiana. It was at least $500,000 to $750,000 but it was not $1 million. I'm kind of, I'd have to go back. I didn't research that, but even if it was $1 million, which I'm fairly certain it was not. I don't think they had $1 million coordinator yet by then.
No, so, I think the highest it ever got at Indiana as a coordinator was somewhere around 800,000, and it may have crept into that $1 million with some extra, maybe a bonus here or there. But I want to say the highest point it got was 800K. And again, I may be mistaken on that aspect of things, but there's no question the salaries that the assistant coaches got, the pot that Coach Signetti had to work with, not only bringing his own guys and rewarding them for their service and dedication to him, but it being able to retain Bob Bobstead. He paid him well. He actually got I believe $100,000 raise in this time period, and then is bringing the other guys along that he's hired from, other programs, being able to bring those guys in and pay them good money. I think that all speaks well for what Coach Signetti's trying to do, but more importantly, Scott Dolson. Don't forget that equation in all this. Here's a guy that this is his first big hire in terms of a head football coach. It's a thing that you got to give him credit for what he did.
Well, here's another thing. There's pressure on Dolson for this to work, not just for football, but because basketball is not exactly ringing the bell right now, and the jury is still out on the hire of Mike Woodson by a lot of fans. So he needs this to work. So because if this were to fail and basketball did not work out, somebody takes the ringer on that one, because lots of contracts, lots of money going out the door in that regard. Now, I'm not trying to say anything negative. I'm just, it's just a fact. But what I was saying about Kalen DeBoer is he went from making less than $1 million and in 5 years making around 10 million.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a lifestyle at 800,000? Ain't bad. Not that I would know, because I don't live in that neighborhood. But I can imagine if I made $800,000 a year, they would feel like I was a billionaire.
Oh yeah.
And then in 5 years later, you gave me 10 million.
Yeah.
What? Wow. You want to talk about a lifestyle change, man?
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Not a bad gig if you can get it.
Not a bad gig at all. And
what's up next for you?
Well, going to have Matt Weaver come on and talk a little bit about these recruiting in general, the junior days, and who are some of the top targets that he thinks that Indiana is, trying to get, and, how is it going with the, these kids that are being recruited by Indiana and their feel for this staff. So going to have him on here in a day or so and get that accomplished. And hey, it's just the everyday, put one foot in front of the other.
Well, we look forward to talking to you again, my friend. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, partner. You guys have a good one too.
Absolutely. Don't forget, Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by Remax Realty and Cheryl Sizemore. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl, and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. We're back with much more, talking some IU basketball with Tyler Smith after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Good morning, Tyler.
Morning. Any laptop sightings, Jim?
Oh shit, no.
Oh,
Your audio sounds great, though. I will say that. I know we've had some audio issues in the past. At least I feel like we have.
yeah. I tried the new mic, but can't figure out the settings yet. Last time or the last couple times.
What kind of microphone is it?
I think it's actually can't remember the name of it now. Looked it up specifically for like a MacBook Pro.
Oh yeah,
for like podcasting, so it just plugs right in. But
yeah, sometimes it's finicky. One thing I've noticed with the one I use is it's a very good microphone, but
Which makes
I
a
feel
very
like
big
the
difference.
bass on it is a little low sometimes.
That's part of it's your surroundings too. I mean, when you're in a big room, sound's going to bounce all over the place, and that it doesn't really matter at that point. It doesn't really matter what microphone you have.
yeah.
You're going to have a bouncy sound. Okay, where the hell? All right, what do you want to talk about first?
Got Penn State coming up, Iowa recap,
Yeah.
Pacers, anything.
The Pacers might be good to hit a little bit since we probably won't have Chris Denary today too.
Well,
You
then
don't
we'll
spend
do
a
2
ton of time
segments.
on it.
We'll do
There you
two
go. Yeah, if
segments.
you're able to stay for 2 segments, that'd be great.
Yep.
Cool. All right, here we go. 10 seconds.
For additional information, 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this February 1st. Appreciate you being with us. Joined now by Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. Indiana basketball coming off of a very nice win over Iowa, but few injuries that will be watched going forward. Of course, Xavier Johnson goes down late in the game. Malik Renew goes down very early in the game. And getting Renew back is without doubt crucial to Indiana's the rest of their season. But not having Xavier Johnson would also be a hit for this team, as they have been without him back and forth for multiple occasions, and it's played havoc with the offense. But right now they're coming off of a win that they were able to gut out against an Iowa team that charged back after Indiana had a 17-point first half lead that they just could not hold.
Yeah, you're sitting there at that game and you're thinking this could be an absolute disaster. They're losing players. They lost a huge lead, and you're just sitting there thinking, if they don't pull this win out, what little maybe optimism that some fans had left would probably go out the window if they were to lose that game. But thankfully, Leal steps up, Cups, the freshman, hits the big shot. They find a way to win to keep some momentum going. They got Penn State Saturday. Another guy we got to watch is Kel'el Ware, who came back from injury and then was favoring his other leg in the game. He was really struggling and really gutsy effort from him and the rest of the guys. So quick little turnaround here before the next game, as it often is. So definitely something to watch. The depth, the lack of depth of this team will surely be tested coming up here.
Yeah, not mentioning the fact that Kel'el Ware, who had just returned from injury, and I don't know, was that the same leg he came up gimpy on? I don't recall.
I don't think so. I think in the other time it was the ankle, and it looked like maybe he was cramping in the calf or lower leg. There were
Then that's a good sign. If it's cramping, that's just
hopefully.
muscle fatigue and get some fluids in there, something like that. But he played a hell of a game in a game that he couldn't come out. He had to be the guy. He had to stay in there and keep on banging it.
Yeah, he was huge. I mean, obviously the Hoosiers would love to have both guys, but the fact that, they've had, that's the joy of having two of them. When one is out, the other one can feast. And that's kind of what they've done this year. But hopefully here in the near future, they get both guys back, keep them on the court, because it's just absolutely vital to success, especially if they want to win some games on the road, which they're going to have to do.
Yeah, Mike Woodson said that we needed him back in the worst way after the win over, and he was exactly right, because there's just something. I mean, Malik Renew is great in the paint. Don't get me wrong. He has great footwork and he's a good scorer, but he's not the defender that Kel'el Ware is. He's not the rim protector that Kel'el Ware is. I mean, when Kel'el Ware is in there, it's he changes offenses. He changes their shots. He changes their attack. And you can tell that they respect exactly the fact of him being in there. And you look at the points scored in the paint of that game. Iowa couldn't do jack squat.
Yeah, and it's so important, not just the total number of block shots, but the altering shots, which I wish they kept that stat more in our minds. Because a guy like that, just altering looks when they do drive into the paint, and even if it's not, again, ending up in the box score as a block shot, it changes the game. I felt like many times this year, if Indiana's going to struggle guarding the three, they should run guys off the three-point line more into Ware to make them try to beat them down low. But you got a team like Iowa that can make a lot of threes, and some crazy ones at that. You cannot also have them scoring in the paint. So to have that weapon down low, obviously incredibly important for the squad.
Absolutely. And getting that win, very important to stop a 3-game skid by Indiana in Big Ten play. And now they will play another game at home against Penn State, in which this is the only game in their final 13 games on the schedule that they going back to that point that they were favored. They were projected to be favored to win. They were not favored to win the game against Iowa, but they did. I would imagine that they were going to be favored against Penn State regardless, and the win against Iowa would have changed that. But that's going to be dependent upon who is able to play, and they're not going to know that right up until game time, because it's going to be an injury report that comes out that has Xavier Johnson questionable at best, and the same for Malik Renew. They're both going to be on that list. I would almost virtually guarantee it.
Yeah, and I could see multiple guys being on the old questionable list for many games here in the future. It's kind of been a staple of the season, unfortunately, but under normal circumstances, I would say Indiana's a pretty good bet to win this game at home. But with those concerns, it's still going to be a challenge. Penn State just won a game at Rutgers this week. I still don't know how Indiana didn't win at Rutgers earlier this year, but Penn State also has beaten Wisconsin at home in mid-January. They are just 1-4 in true road games. So I think, Indiana's got that advantage, even though they just won at Rutgers. But it's a game Indiana needs to get, just like they survived the Iowa game. This is one that if you feel like if they can just survive it, find a way, injuries or not, to come out on top, then you start to see at least a little bit of a path of some intrigue the rest of the season if they can survive this one.
Well, they don't have to. They have to do more than survive. They have to win this game. There's no question. Not because I'm talking of potential NCAA tournament. They're not going to the NCAA tournament. I mean, I don't want to be negative Nancy or whatever, but I'm not going to sit there and pretend this team has a shot to go to the NCAA tournament when they don't. That's not going to happen. That ship sailed. Their metrics suck. They are so far off the radar. They wouldn't be seen if they were shot out of a rocket now. But the NIT is the only thing that they have in addition to the Big Ten tournament. But they have to win more games than they're projected to win to get to the NCAA tournament in NIT, in my estimation.
Well, hey, if you go back to that old Ken Palm thing, it was they predicted 1 win, and
In 13.
They did end up getting those 3 in that first little section of games that Ken Palm had won. So still not good enough. Obviously, the Ken Palm rating is not what you're trying to beat. You're trying to actually make noise and be a tournament team. But yeah, they got to take care of home court the rest of the way. For anyone that's holding out any hope for any postseason ball at all, they're going to have to win every home game left and then find a way to win a couple on the road. Maybe Penn State is one of those, but that won't be easy because they beat Wisconsin there. So no game is easy for this squad. They got to find a way. The great story, though, Anthony Leal, who is now, I believe, for the season, he's 9 for 12 from the field for the season. So hopefully this is a game that propels him to shooting more. They did run a play for him at one point, getting him off a screen. I want to see more of that with these injuries.
Okay, let me stop you right there. So many times we see and hear and say they ran a screen for, I was going to say X, but that was just as in X, Y, and Z. They ran a screen for McKenzie, or they ran a screen for Anthony, and we never see it again.
Yeah.
Why is it that we say that over and over, that they do things in singular terms, especially successful things, especially the things that they need to be doing, but they're not, and I don't get that.
Yeah,
it's like they come in, they have got a play driven or written, drawn up off the coming out of a timeout, and that's it. That's all that play is for, and everything else just go back to doing nothing. In a sense, and I personally do not understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I've been posting this online for quite a while that I feel like this has gone back so many years through so many coaches, even that it's like the off-ball movement for this program has been lacking compared to other programs for I don't know how long. And when they do have something successful, and the reason we notice it the most is because usually they knock down that shot. Mbako, Leal, somebody knocks down a shot out of a nice play. You don't have to do the same play the very next time down the floor, but if you give it a couple turns, the defense is not going to react that quickly, and you need to have counter actions. So if they figure out that play is coming and they switch the screen up top, you got a guy slipping or an additional screen. You have second and third options within your sets. So I would love to see more off-ball movement, and because that goes back to his comments too about we shoot a lot of threes at practice. Well, everybody does, but is your offense tailored to getting better looks than what you've been getting more in the flow of the offense? And are your guys ready to shoot? Because a lot of times they don't appear ready to shoot. Hopefully it's a good sign from Leal and Mbako moving forward.
Indiana, one good new piece of news. They've moved out of the 90s of Ken Palm, and they are now the 88th ranked Ken Palm team, which is a move up, because if they beat Penn State, they're going to move up again. Which is a positive sign for this team, at least.
Yeah, I mean, anything positive at this point. They need to just get hot here at some point, if anything's possible at all. And that game at Illinois, there in Champaign, not hitting a single three, but being so close, that just really, really hurt when they had an opportunity to get that big win, which would have at least again made things interesting the rest of the way if they could pull that one out or the Kansas game out. So, winning it at Mackey is an incredibly difficult task. I know Northwestern almost did it, but different situation when Indiana's there. So you're running out of options for the big wins, especially any games on the road.
But what is it that this team has to do to get to that point? I mean, besides having everybody healthy, which that goes without saying, and I'm not talking about the Penn State game, but after that, Penn State, they should win the Penn State game. Not that Penn State is the only team to beat Wisconsin, FYI, the league leading team, people. But this is a game that Indiana should win. It's not that they're going to win it by 20, but it should not be as tough as the Iowa game. Iowa had some shooters, man. And if Iowa had a post presence, that game would have been Whoo, that would have been scary for Indiana.
Yeah. Well, I think, fans don't want to talk about moral victories or anything. Like, oh, we played well. Like, they don't want to hear it at this point. But the only part of that, the good news is I did feel like their fight was much different in that Illinois game compared to other road games. If they can build on that, and I think actually Anthony Little said it in the huddle in the Iowa game. He said, we were just here this close. So now we got to find a way to get over the hump, as Mike Whitson likes to say as well. So, if they can have that kind of fight, but figure out a way to knock down some shots. Free throws are still mind-boggling how they can't, ever shoot in the 70s or 80s, it seems like, for a game. But I think they're close. They gotta find a way to win one of those to get some confidence, because obviously time is running out now that we're in February.
Yeah, time is not on their side. No, it ain't. John does not know that song either.
I did think you were going to do "Time Is Running Out" by Muse, though, but that's not what you were just doing.
No, because I do not know that song. I'll be honest with you.
And crossing the generational gap right now.
Yeah, see, exactly. That was a little Rolling Stones for you. But I get it. If you're not a Stones fan, then that song would have been beyond your years. Indiana has they've got to continue to improve, but we're talking the last third of the season here. Although the Big Ten season is just now at the halfway point. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, like, still the meat of the schedule is left. So with that comes some opportunity. They've just put themselves in such a hole that there's such little margin for error for anything beyond the season. So, but they find themselves 5-5 in the conference. I think 6th in that range, or 7th in the conference standings. So rack up a couple wins and kind of let the chips fall where they may. But a lot of work to do, and unfortunately the injuries have kind of put a damper in any chance for some of that momentum as far as working together as a unit. But hopefully we see it soon.
Yeah, they're going to have to break through that no matter what. We've got more coming up here. Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. We'll talk about the Big Ten and just all the happenings in college basketball. Kentucky goes down. It's been a bad week for top 10 teams. We'll talk about all that and more. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Ugly Grouper on Anna Maria Island in Florida. Make sure you stop in and say hi to Thad and all the guys. One of the most famous restaurants down there on the island. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
And don't forget to squeeze a little Pacers talk. I mean, you don't have to, but I know he covers
Right.
that beat as well. But it is your show. Don't want to tell you what to do.
Did you see the free throw thing that I sent you?
Yeah, I started looking at it yesterday.
That's eye opening.
Yeah.
Eye freaking opening. That's a story right there.
Yeah.
That took me a while to do all that, man. Just getting those stats.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time.
I thought Boo Booey was going to hit that game winner.
Oh, Boo Booey. That would have been something.
He got a great look. I can't believe they didn't even really send a double on him. He just kind of did his own thing, but didn't make it.
Gosh, if he'd have hit that, that would have been twice in the same season. That would have sunk Purdue.
Yep.
That would have sunk them in their hopes for winning the Big Ten. I truly believe. And that might have knocked them off of the number one line.
Yeah. See, Northwestern, I think 6-4 in the conference, and so that'll be a tough game, even at Assembly Hall.
Yeah, I was looking at the ESPN predictor during that last segment, and I do believe, I don't have it pulled up anymore, but the only games that they're predicting Indiana to win right now are Penn State, Nebraska at home, and there was one more, I believe.
Well, see, that's you're already giving one more than there was previously.
Well, because they won more than they were supposed to in January.
One.
Trying to pull it back up. No, two more than they were supposed to in January. Where did it go? I'll see if I can get it here real quick before we come back from break. The other one was Penn State, Northwestern. They're not Northwestern. They weren't favored against Northwestern, which I was surprised. Maybe they were the only two. Yeah, Nebraska and Penn State at home were the only two that ESPN projects them to win the rest of the way. All right, here we go, guys.
Right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Thanks a lot for being with us on this 1st of February. Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com with me right now. Tyler, yesterday I went through and did a lot of stat gathering on free throws. And just looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think I hit all of the D1 schools in Indiana, which amazingly there are 11 Division I basketball schools in Indiana, which is crazy to think, first of all, in a state the size of Indiana. But I looked at free throws over the last couple of years, and something that quickly becomes apparent is free throws are generally not accidental. Villanova is the leading free throw shooter in the country this year. Guess who was the leading free throw shooter in the country last year? That's right, Villanova. Guess who was the leading free throw shooter in the year before that? That's right, Villanova. So they're shooting over 80% as a team. That cannot be an accident. The ninth ranked, and then I looked through basically the state of Indiana, just the Division I teams in this state. Partly because Indiana State, who will be making the NCAA tournament, is number 9 out of 362 teams. They're shooting nearly 79% as a team. Last year, they were 27th, 77%. The year before that, they were 15th at nearly 78%. That's not accidental. Ball State has gone from, they were the 251st team in 2022, roughly. Is that Mike Lewis's first year? Or was last year his first year?
I think he started when Woodson started. Is that right?
Okay. Well, that would be 2022, I believe. But they went from shooting right at 70%. Last year, they were right at 69%. This year, they've taken a jump of 10% and are 10th in the country at 78.4%. So there's 2 Indiana teams that are in the top 10. At a third at Butler, who sits in the number 13 spot. Again, there are 362 teams, and I've already named 3 Indiana schools that are in the top 13, but they're shooting over 78%. They've gone from since the last 3 years, 69%, 74%, to 78%, a gradual increase. Probably that coincides with the coaching of Thad Matta.
Yeah.
I even put Louisville in here because Louisville, as bad as they are, John, how long has Kenny Payne been at Louisville?
This is the second season. This is the second season.
Perfect example. In 2022, when he was not there, they shot 67%, were the 312th team in the country. Kenny Payne's first year, as bad as they are, Louisville jumped to shooting 74%. That's a huge jump. 5% is a gigantic jump in this. And that put them in the top 100.
They had 4 wins last year, so I don't know how big of a difference that really made for their season.
That's not my point. My point is, as bad as that team was, they shot free throws very well. And this year, as bad as they are, they're still in the top 100. They've increased. They're at the number 86 team.
Does it show how many they shoot, like their free throw? Like how often?
No, but you're getting lost in you're getting lost in the details. That's not the point. The point is of consistency of where a team is in a specific discipline. Valpo, 76%, 72%, 74% in increasing 3-year structure. The University of Southern Indiana. They've gone from 333rd to 319th team, shooting in the 60s, to this season shooting 73%. Purdue has just been a pretty much model of consistency, except they've gone from 191st team to the 80th team, and they were 154th team this year, but 71%, 74%, 72%. It doesn't take, there's big gaps in small numbers, but they're shooting well over 70%. IUPUI this season, 72.3%. Notre Dame has led the way, 75%, 76%, 72% this year. Evansville, 71%, had a gigantic drop. I don't know what the hell happened to them last year at 63%, but this year they're back to 70%. They are the last team shooting right at 70%, and they're the 243rd ranked team in the country out of 362. Then you've got Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne, 75 or 74%, 71%, 70%. Then you've got Indiana. Now, Indiana had taken a great increase after the Archie Miller years. Let me tell you what the Archie Miller years were like first. The 4 seasons of Lil Rhodey. 65.7%, 66%, 67.9%, 66.5%. That's what life was like under Lil Rhodey. Currently, Rhode Island, his current stop, they're shooting 62% and are the 359th ranked team out of 362. They're almost dead last. So that tells you something about Lil Rhodey's ability to get teams to shoot free throws well. But Indiana currently 65.8%. They're the 326th ranked team out of 362. There's an anomaly. Part of that is two-folded. And Trey Galloway and Peyton Sparks. If you took those two guys out of the deal, Indiana's numbers would probably skyrocket. But Trey Galloway most of all, because he's taking the most free throws. But it's not just him that misses free throws, and I don't get the drop off. But you can't ignore that. But for Indiana to be by far the worst three-point shooting just in its own state, much less their own conference, but they're not dead last in the conference. That honor goes to Rutgers, who beat Indiana, by the way. So just a little number churn that I went through yesterday, Tyler.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. The fact, though, that when Indiana improved, when Woodson got here, it was still just 233rd in the country, 205 in the country, and now 326. So it's been a long time since Indiana University has been even average at the foul line compared, to the country, to the rest of the country. So it's pretty wild. And this is another thing I talked about earlier, Woodson's comments about how many free throws or threes they take in practice. I'm not there at practice, so I don't know exactly what they do, but I know in my time.
I don't think it has anything to do with practicing free throws.
I would say you got to switch up what you're doing. It's not just reps, because anybody can go shoot free throws, but can you put the kind of pressure on?
Yes.
Is it game-like? Is it with noise?
To me, that's two things. And I've learned this from fortunate having Todd around. There's probably some shooting flaws in how they are approaching these. Number one, and number two, how are they mentally approaching them? I mean, what is their thought? Are they sitting there thinking about these? Are they locked in? Are they being affected by outside noise? What is it? Like someone like Trey Galloway, who should probably be shooting 75%, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. That's not out of the question. It just makes no sense to me how that is the case. But those two things are what I would look at first. All right, what is the shooting form here? What are you doing? And then what are you doing wrong? Why are you missing these free throws? Let's sit down and talk about this. No, I mean, I'm talking about with the athlete. I would sit down and have a conversation. Why do you think that you're missing so many free opportunities at home, no less? Mm-hmm. What is it that is on your mind when you go to the free throw line? What's your routine? Do these guys have an exact routine every time? I mean, I don't want to sound like some old fart that's yelling at the moon, but everybody remembers Steve Alford had this kind of goofy routine where he'd bend over and rub his hands on his socks and dribble the basketball 3 times, and then shoot his free throws and shoot about 90%.
Yep.
But he had that same routine every time. Now, I'm not saying you got to do something like that, but it has to be a routine.
Yeah.
Routine means the same thing over and over. You have to be in that mental state. And I don't know that they enter a mental state when they go to do this. I think they just step up, and each time could be completely different for a lot of them every time they go to the line.
Yeah, they need to take tips from their own teammate, because Mackenzie Mbakos had no problem. He's shooting about 85%. And as a freshman, he's got the same routine I've noticed every time. It's a very short, maybe one dribble, and puts it up and is real smooth. I remember growing up, I would mimic Reggie Miller's routine. He would go get the rosin, and then he would go and take a breath, take 6 small dribbles, pause, and then shoot. And, same routine over and over. And it definitely helps guys. But along with that, it's not just about getting – hey, go to the foul line and shoot 100 free throws. That's not going to help you as much as, hey, go to the line and shoot 2 pressured free throws, because that's game-like. So I can't speak for the coaching staff. I don't know if they're trying some of those things in practice or not. I just know my time as a coach, if we were struggling, we had to change how we shot the free throws, the drills behind it, the mental approach behind those free throws, because anybody can go shoot a bunch of free throws, but it's not game-like if it's not 2 in a pressure situation.
So that's something that I don't know that it's something that they could get worked out this year still and would pay dividends, because you look at a game like last night between Purdue and Northwestern, but if you have a disparity they have, it wouldn't much matter. But if you are the team that's receiving 48 free throws, you better be able to take advantage of that, because if you shoot 22 for 44 or whatever, that's going to be a complete total embarrassment. and it will cost you games at some point. The sheer fact that Purdue won that game, getting a disparity in free throws, should show some people that this is why that Purdue team is not going to win a national championship. If they have to rely on getting 48 free throws at home, that ain't going to happen in the tournament. And I think it shows the weakness of Purdue, where they can be attacked. Northwestern has done this to them both times. And there is going to be another team that does that, because once they get into the NCAA tournament and they face a myriad of these type of teams who have seen this resume, they've seen what it takes to beat Purdue, and that's what they're going to do. And in the NCAA tournament, I just don't see that kind of a disparity coming.
And that's one reason why some people theorize that the Big Ten has struggled so much in March, is because the games are officiated differently and they're so used to one style. Or, as you know, in the Big Ten, sometimes it's the first half they play football, the second half every touch is a foul, and there's kind of disparity there. But it's just a different game in March. And when it's the pressure that's going to be on Purdue this year, they have an incredible team and a great opportunity, but man, that's going to be a lot of pressure based on the last couple of years of disappointment. So that free throw disparity will be something to watch for them.
And then, of course, other games around last night. Kentucky loses to Florida. Another top 10 team goes down. Been a rough week for top 10 teams.
It has. I think it's, tis the season. There's going to be a lot of movement in that way. There's a lot of rivalry games.
This was at home, by the way, in a Rupp Arena.
Yep. Overtime, wasn't it? Yeah, overtime. Lost by 3.
Yes.
UConn kind of survived a
91.
little scare, 9-point home win.
I think they were down at the half. No, they had a 1-point lead at the half. I remember. I knew it was close, but they ended up pulling that game out at home against Providence, 74-65. Auburn had no trouble with Vanderbilt, 81-54. Baylor goes to Central Florida and had a battle, but win that game 77-69. Boise State goes to New Mexico. We were talking about them yesterday. Richard Pitino leaves Minnesota, not run out of there, but they were done with him. Fine. He goes to New Mexico. They're ranked 19th in the country, and we're 18-3 before yesterday's loss at home to Boise State, which will sting a little bit, but Boise State, a good team at 15-6. But still, they're 18-4, man. Yeah. There are certain coaches that don't make it in the Big Ten, but go to teams like New Mexico, Nevada, and just thrive. Coach at Nevada.
Just not Rhode Island, right?
Not Rhode Island. No. Well, the coaches I'm talking about had a modicum of success, at least in the Big Ten. Lil Rhodey had 0 success. Alabama, number 24, Alabama goes to Georgia and gets an 85-76 win. Georgia 14-7 still. Alabama rising up. They're 7-1 in the SEC, so they're going to be a threat in that SEC race before the season is over. But the Big Ten race, man, this is I'm telling you, I've talked about this. I think this is going to be a tighter race than people think. Wisconsin still with just one singular loss. And boy, Purdue, just like the year before, they had games that were so close to being losses. Same deal this year. Right now, Wisconsin's still leading the Big Ten standings, which if you had offered a bet to me at the start of the season, who would be leading at the break, I would have been shocked if it wasn't Purdue. But they're only a game behind Wisconsin at 9-2. And their schedule gets easier. Wisconsin comes into Bloomington in February. Illinois behind Purdue, and then Northwestern at 6-4. And I think they're the most difficult portion of their schedule is behind them. They're 11-1 at home. Northwestern's one of those teams that I think could be Northwestern is going to be the Michigan State of last year in the tournament for the Big Ten, in my opinion, just because of their guard play, of what they can do, how they can get you up and down the floor. When you can do what they have done against Purdue in both places, especially in that environment, ooh, I'm buying Northwestern right now.
Yeah. Buy that Buoy stock for the tournament runs. It's going to be fun to watch. You know, it's fun too when Wisconsin comes to Assembly Hall. Purdue fans are going to have to be IU fans for a night.
That is a strange feeling, or that will be a strange feeling for those people to see that. Nebraska, there's a four-way tie for fifth right now. Indiana in that bunch, along with Nebraska, Michigan State, and Maryland. Indiana has a win over right now, but I think that they still have to travel to there. Michigan State comes to Bloomington, but Indiana does not have to go to East Lansing. Indiana still has matchups with Northwestern left. They have not played Boo yet.
Yeah. A lot of intriguing games left at Assembly Hall, so at least that'll be fun to watch and fun to be a part of. And I think that Michigan State one is that the last one? Is that senior night?
Michigan State is the last game of the season. Yes.
Yeah. So that could be for position of some sort for seeding and for the conference tournament coming up, and could mean a lot for at least one of the teams, maybe both. We'll find out.
Wisconsin travels to Nebraska tonight, so there's another game to watch for the conference race. Nebraska has been very, very good at home. They are one of those teams I just mentioned that's in a tie at 5-5, tied for fifth. But they have had a good season this year. A little bit, not terribly surprising. They've been on the run, but we'll see what they can do because this is a tough test for Wisconsin to go into Lincoln. And we'll see how that turns out. Make sure you give Tyler Smith a follow at thehoosier.com. What do you guys have up and what's coming?
Penn State Saturday, so it's a lot of good stuff from Tuesday. A lot of good stories from Kellel Ware, Anthony Leal, and we will check in with the Hoosier legend here soon and have coverage on Penn State and beyond.
Who would that legend be?
Actually, there's a few that we're talking to. We're trying to get the exact order, so I guess to be determined on that.
Good deal. Good enough. Hey, Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. We've got more coming up on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends down in Southern Indiana and Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry. You got to keep that championship smile, and to do that, you need to go see Dr. J Reynolds. And we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I've got the sound we didn't use yesterday if you want to use that here.
Yes, please and thank you.
Just Woodson and Anthony Leal.
Damn.
What's wrong?
My laptop, man.
What'd it do?
It's gone. I got to the IU game the other night, opened up my bag, and I'm like,
that happened to you either last year or 2 years ago, too.
No, I've never lost. I don't remember ever losing a laptop.
You lost something at the Big Ten tournament.
My bag.
Your bag. Oh, yeah, it was your bag. That's right.
The whole damn bag went missing. Somebody moved it.
Now I remember that.
But it got recovered, but I still have my charger. So I was packing up and just either didn't put it in, and I'm thinking it was when I was doing that post-game show Saturday night. Oh, God, I didn't see this.
Come on, man.
My water tastes nasty. I need to freshen it up a little bit. But I'll just hold off till we're done with the show. Since we only got about 15 minutes left.
What?
Nothing. I was just kind of blabbering. All right, here we go.
And it is your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, February 1, President's Month. Appreciate you being with us. Let's see. Looking into some of the comments from the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Appreciate everybody on there. Trying to find some comments that questions or anything like that. Brian thinks that Indiana finishes out 5-5 if Malik isn't out too long. I don't know that he's. Yeah, we don't have an indication yet on that. Like I said, I have no idea the extent of the injury, and I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I will say that I saw him walking on crutches, which that was evident. He did that on the court once, but when I saw him, he was there. He didn't have a sock on. I think they were just going to the X-ray room or something, but there was no ice, no brace, nothing like that. It was just, I think, a precautionary to keep, from putting weight on it, just, arresting any further deal. The fact that there was no ice on anything, a little surprising. But so that either worries you or that's either pretty good or pretty bad. But we will certainly find out. I'm not sure that in a game like Penn State, do you give him, depending on what it is, do you just give him the time to rest? I don't. Penn State is not as good as Iowa, and Kel'el Ware is such a force that I think that you're gonna possibly look at not playing him just to give him that extra time. But we shall see this Saturday as the Hoosiers take on Penn State. Where else was I just looking? Tonight's schedule. I mentioned the games in the Big Ten, but there are plenty of others to watch as well on this fine evening. Trying to see any of the ones that stand. Oh, there you go. I just saw it and I lost it. Lil Rhodey's playing somewhere. Oh, that's Long Island. My bad. Lil Rhodey, he's cracking me up, man. That dude is going to walk away. How's he ever get another coaching job? But it won't matter. He doesn't need one. He'll spend the rest of his times talking about it on on whatever, being a podcaster because he's got millions upon millions in the bank from being a failed head coach. I need one of those gigs, man. Need one of those gigs. But the state of Indiana is going to have some teams in the NCAA tournament this year. Indiana won't be one of those, but Butler will be. Wisconsin and Nebraska tonight. I mentioned that. That's a game to watch, peeps. That is a game to watch. That is a big time Big Ten game as far as the standings go. Nebraska needs this win. Don't kid yourself. They're 5-5 right now. They lose this game, they're below 500, which is a little surprising to say. Would be surprising to say. Their record would fall to 15-7, but they are 13-1 at home. So, Wisconsin 3-3 on the road. Boy, oh boy, that's a game I will be watching. I don't know, man. If I had to pick, I'd go with Nebraska just because they need it. Because they've gone 13-1 at home. Wisconsin is 3-3 on the road, as opposed to Purdue's 4-2. So, my take on that, Indiana, I think that they win against Penn State this weekend, and that gives them another win. And then that would move them up to 6-5 and keep them and kind of move them out of this tie, this big old conglomerate in the middle. Indiana can finish in the top 6 or 7 in the Big Ten, but they have a rough portion of their schedule remaining. And they actually have a chance. Oh God, I hate saying this, to work themselves on to the bubble.
Wow, didn't expect that to come out of your mouth after all that was said earlier in the show.
Well, it's not that I want to be negative. It's just I don't base the future on hope. That's, fans are thinking that Indiana can win out or whatever. No, they can't. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think anyone. So, I mean, I'm sure certainly there are people basing things off of hope. But when you look at Indiana's schedule, in my opinion, and again, my opinion probably means nothing to a lot of people, and that's
my opinion.
Obviously, is totally fine.
No less than mine.
Well, exactly. But if you look at who's left, if you look at the rest of Indiana's schedule, outside of the Purdue game on the road, which comes up here in about 9 days, every other team on your schedule can be chalked up as a winnable game. And I remember we got into this winnable game conversation back in football season, because winnable game doesn't mean you're going to win the game. It just means you're playing an opponent or you're playing in a scenario that allows you a decent opportunity at a win. And because Indiana's already been through the toughest part of their schedule, and they didn't come out of any of those games to win, by the way, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, but because they've already gotten through their toughest part, they don't have to face a lot of those teams on the road anymore. Their only road game left against a team in the top 25 is Purdue on the road. Every other ranked team they play, which is currently one outside of Purdue, and that's Wisconsin, is at home. Every other game is against somebody who is in the middle of the pack or lower in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten is, quite frankly, one of the weaker power conferences this year. So Indiana has an opportunity to rack up the wins. Will they do it? They haven't shown they can do it yet. But if they can get on a roll, they most certainly can work their way back onto the bubble. But that is yet to be seen so far.
You just rung the bell. They haven't shown that they can do it. yet. That's why my opinions are what they are. Because I base it on what I have seen. I base it upon the knowledge that I have picked up, from our post-game shows, talking about what this team's doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and the teams they have left to play. But I agree with some of what you say.
And a lot of that, like you also have to beat, like you have to win games on the road that you probably weren't thinking about chalking up as wins.
Well, that was always the case, of course, but that's why
you have to beat Ohio State.
And that is exactly why there is not the kumbaya feeling of that happening, because that has not been the case. And Penn State, they start off with another home win, gives them 2 wins in a row. Confidence, not only confidence, but how they won the other night. They had to do it without Malik Renew. And they did it in a different manner. They did it by getting production from people who have not been that productive. i.e. Anthony Leal. If you cannot expect 13 points a game from Anthony Leal for the rest of the year. That's not fair. And that's not smart thinking. But if he gains confidence from that performance and can be just more productive, period, that's something Indiana wasn't getting. He was averaging 1.8 points per game prior to that game. Okay, it doesn't matter what happened before that game now. What does he do from here out? If he averages 6 points a game, that is 5 extra points, 4 to 5 or 6 extra points that they weren't getting. That matters. If they could shoot this much better at the free throw line, there's another 5 or 6 points. There's 10 points a game they just picked up. That's my whole point. It's the small things that they have not done all year, but yet they still have a chance at doing it.
It's a very small margin of error. Like you'll have to beat Ohio State here coming up in a few days on the road. Yeah. And then yes, they're struggling, but it's still a road game. You have to win that. You have to win on the road at Penn State. You have to win on the road at Maryland, who at the moment is doing very well. That game's not until March. And then you'll have to beat Minnesota on the road right after that. Those are all of the hurdles that if Indiana is going to work its way back onto the bubble, which again, that's not even a guarantee, obviously. If you're on the bubble, that comes down to every other team's resume who's also on the bubble. But if you're Indiana, you've got to find a way to win games that you probably weren't expecting. And I don't want to say that you weren't expecting to win games against Minnesota on the road and that kind of thing, but it's just tough to win in the Big Ten in general.
That's not an expected win by any stretch of the imagination. Minnesota has been a decent team this year, and any team at home in the Big Ten, as i.e. Rutgers, the worst team in the league this year, or Michigan, rather, Indiana was able to pick up a win there, but that's the only place so far. They were not able to do it against a Rutgers team who they were much better than. But I think that they're getting a little better. They're finding this last game, I think, showed them that they can get production from other places. But also there have been changes that people may not acknowledge. Some people do. The way that Mike Woodson has managed things lately has been different. He's not doing what he did at the early part of the season and the last year with his hockey lineup crap or substitution stuff. But yet there's no acknowledgement to that, which I don't care. Hell, I can see it. Everybody sees it. There's a reason why some things get better. They're doing some things different. Finally, things that a lot of people have complained that they weren't doing. Now,
1 minute.
We're out of time. Gee whiz, I could have gone on. But we'll do it. We'll pick it back up tomorrow. Who's on the docket tomorrow, John Boy?
We'll be back with Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Catch up on all things that he's been writing. And Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Talk a little bit about Penn State coming up on Saturday, I'm sure. And Casey Bartley from Boiler Upload. Hopefully we'll get to reconnect with him and hear his thoughts on where the Boilermakers currently stand.
And the rest of the Big Ten as well.
Chris Tenary was off this week. He's traveling, so look forward to talking to him again next week. Big thanks to Shannon Griffith and Tyler Smith for joining us today on the program. But most importantly, thanks to each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here, and we are eternally grateful. I sincerely mean that. John Boy, thanks for keeping us between the white lines. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.